If I was in the future, it would be that time for me as well. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome again to the Proper Scoundrels podcast, where today we are going to talk about fire.
Fire. Love fire.
Fire. If you play with fire, you'll wet the bed.
Is that what they used to tell you?
Yep. It was not true.
Yeah, I haven't peed the bed in like probably 4 months. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. And I've played with fire in the past 4 months. And I mean, when I peed in the bed, it was because I was mad at the dogs.
Assert dominance.
Yeah. Ugh, it's mine. I marked it. So right now, LA is on fire. It is a flaming hot mess, and it's not because of all the gays. Just saying.
Yeah, LA's kind of a crap show. And I seen this video. Uh, I want to say it was when Trump was on Rogan, and he was talking about how bad the water system is in LA, and they were going to go on they were talking about having to go on like water rationing and things like that, and then this thing kicked off.
So that happens a lot, actually. I don't know how much you know about it, but especially LA and that area, they're pretty much in a desert. And so they've been really good about bringing water from upstate in through like the aqueducts and stuff like that. And they have all these reservoirs. There's some state reservoirs, and then there's some community reservoirs. Think about it kind of like big city fire departments, little volunteer departments. And so the state operates certain reservoirs, and then other reservoirs are a little more community based. And one of the big problems is one of the community based reservoirs was emptied for repairs. And everybody in the media right now is on top of that because they're like, well, there's nothing that looks like repairs happening. It's open and dry. You can see it from space. You can see it from an airplane. You can see it from everywhere. And so that was a big chunk of the area's water supply. Now, one of the things I think is interesting is a lot of people are complaining about the dry hydrants there.
What's wrong with the dry hydrants?
They don't understand what that means.
Why don't you explain what a dry hydrant is?
I certainly will. Now, for the unlearned heathens amongst us, mind you, a dry hydrant, to hear dry hydrant, you would think, oh, the hydrant has run dry. A dry hydrant means there is no water coming to the hydrant, that there's a valve at the water supply that you would open, and then it would be a wet hydrant. If you hit a dry hydrant and the top of the hydrant is built specifically to break off in case it's hit, you won't see water flowing up. If you hit a wet hydrant, water spraying straight up in the air. So most municipal systems are a dry hydrant system because things happen. And so until you open that valve at the water supply, at the main that's below it, you're not going to have water in that hydrant. Now, I do not know. I do not live in LA. I have been to LA. I didn't like it. I don't plan on going back. It's very crowded, lots of weirdos. And so I'm not here to be criticizing their planners or their city engineers or anything like that. But I think a lot of times in situations like this, semantics come into play, and reporters are stupid people. They couldn't find a real job, so they decided to talk to other people about stuff. So if you want good reporting, Straight Arrow News, We the 66, Al Jazeera, find some people that don't have money in the stake, and they'll tell you the truth. So if you hear about dry hydrants in LA, you don't know if they're built to be dry hydrants or if they ran out of water.
And there's another type of dry hydrant that You see more of the rural areas of and you'll see this at like lakes and things like that, especially near the water. It'll be normally like a white tube that sticks up, and it's got this weird, funny looking strainer that's got these weird couplings on the end of it, and the fire truck can pull up to that and lessen the centrifugal force and pull water from the lake. So sometimes you'll see that. That's another form of dry hydrant, but that's not what they're talking about in LA. They're talking about the other type.
Correct. And that's actually called drafting for those of you who are wanting to look for a career with a bunch of drunk Irishmen. So, but you can draft from any water source. Most fire trucks have a black section of tube that has that strainer in it that they can drop into a water supply and pull in water. They have that strainer in there so they're not pulling in rocks and debris to get into that very fragile pump that's inside the fire truck. But one of the problems in LA is that you don't have a multitude of water sources like that. You've got the ocean, and that's about it. I do not know I don't know if drafting from a saltwater source would be good for the pump on a fire truck.
I
But
can answer
considering
that.
you can, oh yes, please answer that. Please speak on that.
So in the event of like something like this, it's acceptable, but after it's over, it just takes a large amount of water to blow out the salt that's in it. Um, but like over time, especially if your operation goes into the weeks and stuff like that, your pump's done, and then that's um, for a regular fire engine, that's probably $50,000 cost.
Considerably less than some of the houses that have burnt away.
Yeah. I seen this video and it was showing like all the famous people's houses that burn up. And it's not like I made my money on crypto. This was like actors and stuff like that. And so many houses are gone. I mean, it's insane.
I have really enjoyed seeing the pictures and the commentary on the houses that have stayed, that have made it through.
I haven't seen anything about it, but what are they saying about that?
So there are two big ones that have made it through. One is the house of Tom Hanks, who obviously paid the Illuminati to not burn his house down. But then there's another one that was built by an architect very recently, like within the past 6 months recently.
Oh,
And it was built very smart, and it was built to withstand a wildfire, and it did.
wow.
Yeah. Mark Reisner, I believe is his name. He's a famous builder from like the Home Depot shows and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It might be Matt Reisinger. But he did a video on it that I thought was really cool. So the house, one, did not have any vegetation against it. Two, the outside was cement stucco board type stuff. There was also a barrier fence that was made out of concrete block that surrounded the house. And something that was unique about it that you probably couldn't get away with in a climate like ours, there were not any eaves with
Hmm.
vents. And so what happens to burn a house down in a wildfire a lot of times is there's a constant draw of air coming into those eaves because of pressures that are different inside the house and outside the house, especially when you have a temperature outside that it's a lot different than the temperature inside. Like a couple hundred degrees of a fire coming towards you, and then, maybe 100 degrees Fahrenheit of the inside of your house, you have a pressure gradient, and it will draw in to equalize that gradient. And embers will come in to those eaves. you've got a constant flow of air, so it's very dry because of convection, and it just goes up like a tinderbox once those embers get inside the attic.
Mm-hmm.
And the house that was standing, you could tell that it had some scorching. You could tell that some of it was darker than the other parts of the house, but the house was standing. The windows were in place. They hadn't even broken.
I
So
wonder what kind of windows they use because, like, you know as well as I do that, like, your typical windows that 99.9% of people have, you put a little bit of heat to them, they start breaking.
tempered glass.
Mm,
It was disclosed by the architect of the house that all the glass in the house was tempered glass.
interesting.
And he's been selective about what he says about the house because I think it's really classy when people show restraint. And we saw this in Appalachia when Biltmore would not make a statement about any damage they had received at the Biltmore property.
Hmm.
And it was a beautiful thing. They said, we're not going to make any statement to take away the attention from our community. They're like, we're Biltmore House. We're going to be okay. But we're not going to take any attention away from the community of Asheville and the surrounding areas that need so much attention. Just a class act, even if you don't like Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, so that brings up to a point that I wanted to make was you made the comment about the outside of the house. There's no vegetation near the house and things like that. That's something that we should kind of look at as far as like ourselves for our own personal protection of our property. If you have mulch beside your house, mulch is one of the very few things that will combust on its own. It will smolder, all that fun stuff, and all it needs is a little bit of oxygen and it will come up, right? So mulch around the house, I have to admit, it looks really nice, but it will absolutely burn your house down. Think about whenever the leaves start falling. That's part of wildfire season. When those leaves get brittle and dry and they come down, if you can rake them away at least 10 feet from your house, if you can at least do that, that your chances of surviving or your house surviving a fire, I mean, even if it's a slow grounding creeping fire and it creeps up to your porch, it could start your porch on fire, picking up sticks, looking at the trees that are around the house, if they're starting to die, go ahead and cut that thing down. Might not want to, but that might be the thing that keeps your house standing. And in the event that there is some type of a fire or something like that, a really good video that I watched recently was a guy named Wrangler Star out of Washington. He had a fire right in his backyard, and he went into work. He went straight to work on his property, making sure that he had some tools strategically laid out. Now he's got a lot of land, mind you. He was wetting the roof on his house because even though the fire wasn't right in his backyard and it was a few miles down the road, embers can travel far, especially if it's a wildfire and there's several thousand acres. Those embers can go far. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is wildfires, once they get to a certain size, they will absolutely make their own weather. It's called pyronimbus clouds, and you'll see that forming over the fire, and it will make a breeding ground for fire and allow it to keep growing and developing and stuff like that. So little things like that will really help. I'm not telling you to pick up all the leaves in your yard, but like it probably would help if you had a pretty good cushion of it. Wet your grass down. If you got a fire coming your way, if you can, wet your grass down, wet your roof, siding, things like that. All that stuff creates some type of barrier between.
Just keep that in your mind when you putting that mulch in your kidney beds out there. Rocks are beautiful. Lava rocks, beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful lava rocks, won't combust.
And it
Uh,
costs a little bit more, but you don't have to replace it every year, because mulch, it looks bad after a year. You get some fresh mulch, God, it looks good, but throw some rocks down. It's cheaper in the long run.
yep. And going back to the vegetation, if there's a limb touching your asphalt shingles, eventually you will have a leak there.
Yep.
So it is just wise to keep vegetation away from the front, away from the house. Keep a buffer there. Keep a tree out in the yard. You need to have some place to have a rope swing for the kids. But always with the OnlyFans with this one. But you know, a well groomed yard is a safe yard in any type of wildfire season, and you do not have to live in an arid area like LA to be affected by a wildfire. You
Mm-mm.
could be Appalachia had wildfires what 2014, 2016.
Yeah, we just talked about it at work. It was 2016. It was called the Pinnacle Mountain Fire. Um, it was about the same time the Smoky Mountains were burning. Um, but yeah, we had one in our backyard, and it was started by some Boy Scouts. The Pinnacle Mountain Fire was. When the weather gets with high winds and low humidity, that is the perfect setup for a fire to start and to maintain. You know, if you got low winds and high humidity, you probably can get a fire started, but it's going to be much more difficult to um, maintain. Because the air moisture is there, so it's not going to spread as fast. But high winds, low humidity, and they can take off on you rather quickly. Um, yeah, very quickly.
I have a thought in my head, and I don't know if you can confirm this, and I don't know if I learned this at any time in my past. Is there a specific designation for wildfire? Like, is there a difference between a forest fire and a wildfire? I know that in experiences I've had in the past, we have discussed the difference between a forest fire and a wildfire. There's a huge difference between a controlled burn and a fire. We do not say it's a controlled fire. We don't say it's a cleaning fire. We say that it is a controlled burn. But I felt like there was a difference in forest fire and wildfire. And I thought it had something to do with ability to manage it. But to really illustrate what Blake was saying about high winds, low humidity, you're talking about convection. So if you have an air fryer, you get your food cooked a lot faster in there because it's heat being blown by air and it's dry. So, you know, your food comes out nice and crispy because it has sucked all the moisture out of it. And Blake is in the Google.
So a forest fire is an uncontrolled fire occurring in vegetation more than 6 feet in height. So the vegetation has to be 6 feet in height. But the definition between a forest fire is a wildfire, essentially. Um, but a wildfire has got many designations. So a small wildfire is that is less than 1,000 acres. If it's greater than 1,000 to 50,000, it is considered a medium, and if it's greater than 50,000, it is a large.
Yeah. So it if you live in an urban area, you probably don't have to worry that much about a wildfire. If you live in any type of better area, I said it, where you can go out in your yard and zero a rifle or just pee off your front porch. Something to think about because you never know where they'll come when they'll come, uh, you can pretty much expect that they will come. They have had wildfires in Oregon, which is one of the wettest places in America. It's like a little piece of England right here in the colonies. Uh, we've had wildfires in Appalachia. Uh, I don't know if we've had wildfires around me. I know that we have forestry assets here that are tasked to handle fires that happen in the forest. So if there's a forest anywhere around you, especially when it's been dry, you could have a wildfire, and it doesn't have to be button up to your back porch.
Hmm. So, one of the biggest things is like I'm a huge component of land conservation, right? And I think that fi-
Proponent,
yeah, what did I say?
proponent.
What did I
You
say?
said you said component,
Look,
but
I'm half redneck, man. Like
I
I can say that.
I
Okay.
was like, what piece are you? But no, proponent. You support land management.
Technically, I am a piece to it because I am doing things. So
Blake is a component of land management.
yeah, that's me. All right. Uh, look, I'd never claimed to be smart. I never once did.
I I only sound it like twice a day. The rest of the time, I'm just bumping into walls.
Um, but yeah, I'm big on that of land management, land conservation, and things like that. And prescribed burns are amazing for the environment, but it's got to be very controlled. But one thing that does is it lowers the risk of having a wildfire in that particular area. A lot of things it does as well is like it puts nutrients back into the soil. It makes the ground grow. All the underbrush and stuff, it clears it off. It kind of, per se, battle hardens the trees a little bit because the fire kind of burns off some little small things at the bottom, but the nutrients it puts in the ground allows the trees to grow up a little bit better. Um, the grass, it'll be nice and green, lush vegetation and things like that. Um, and the wildlife love it. Deer are able to eat because now they've got food. The turkeys like it because um, all the worms, things like that, kind of come to the top. Um, it uncovers a lot of food that they want to eat. It's great across the board. It's absolutely phenomenal. But again, how it relates to this is it decreases fire danger. Like I am going to be burning off my yard once a year. Once it gets ready, I'm going to burn it off, and next year it's going to be very nice. But I also live out in the country, and wildfires are kind of a big deal.
Yes. And, a lot wildfires are not hurricanes. You could write out a lot of natural disasters in your house, but not a wildfire.
Yeah.
Uh, and some of the death that we have seen in the LA wildfires is people who didn't leave.
Yeah.
This is not like the Paradise Fire. The Paradise Fire came up a mountain really unexpectedly. It started from poor infrastructure from the power company in California, that same power company that they want you to charge your cars with. Don't believe the climate hype. But it creeped up a mountain and caught everybody off guard. They had about 3 hours to evacuate. It wasn't enough time. There was a whole lot of problems with it. There's REI did a great podcast about it. It's called Wildfire, and it discusses a lot of different wildfires that have happened. And I think there's a podcast specific to the Paradise Fire. And that was an incident. That was a wildfire that within 3 hours was severely impactful, and people couldn't evacuate. People in LA knew that this fire was coming. They knew that the winds were coming. They knew to be prepared. Some people did prepare. Some people did get out. Some people didn't. Maybe they couldn't. We are not judging the people who have lost life or home. I am not. I promise you, Blake's not. I can just tell you what kind of man he is. But a lot of people, they'll ride out a storm. Uh, a wildfire is not the same.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't like when the government says, "Hey, you've got to do this. You've got to evacuate." I would absolutely heed to the warning in that situation. Um, yeah, very well said, Jay. Very well said. But
I really think Cal Fire should be its own entity in the world outside of every government. And I accept the fact that they are a California government agency, but they have literally written the book on wildfire management, and they know what they're talking about. And if Cal Fire tells you something, you should do it right then.
yeah, Cal Fire is those guys are great. And I want to say this about the firemen that are fighting this fire. I think they're doing an outstanding job. I think they're running into a lot of difficulties. I think a lot of their difficulty is their upper echelon of management. There's been a lot of stuff coming out about that fire chief, and I feel for those guys. Like I really do. But I think the fire chief is really put in bad light right now. I think some of it's deserved, some of it's not. But
I
those,
really want to I really want to illustrate that we're speaking specifically about the LA mayor, the LA fire chief. In an incident like this, Cal Fire has taken over control.
mhm,
Um, Cal Fire has a direct line to um, Gavin Newsom, but Cal Fire is in control uh, of this. But they became in control because other people who should have controlled it couldn't,
mhm.
because they were so caught up on bullshit. And I really hope, I've never been a huge fan of California. I got a speeding ticket there one time and it was really expensive. And so I am not a big fan of California. They have stupid laws that are directly against the Constitution. I do not like them. But I really hope that this is a catalyst for the people of California to take their state back, to take their resources back, and to take their lives back away from this just absolute moronic mentality that some of the things that we have problems with right now is the LA County Fire Department budget was cut $17 million. There are fire departments who don't have a $17 million budget for a decade. And you cannot keep firefighters and responders for pennies on the dollar. That's not how it works. You're asking people to put their lives on the line. It is far more dangerous than any other profession, except maybe crabbing or something, but for somebody who's coming out of high school, fresh into the working world, you can go to a fire academy, become a fireman, and have a career that will last you years, decades. And there's just so many places you can go with it. It's such a noble calling, but people die at it. There is uh, it's called the secret list, and it does nothing but discuss firefighter line of duty death and close calls.
Mhm.
It is updated daily.
Uh,
And so to think that you could go into a profession to make a statement, to go into a profession like firefighting, to make a statement like, oh, you know, I'm going to be a firefighter because I want to respond to somebody that looks like me. I have been in this business since 1992. The people that won't help don't give a damn what you look like. They just want to hear you say yes. And the vast majority of fire department personnel, whether they be firefighters, volunteers, paid, paramedics, rescue technicians, whatever they are, when they hear the call, they say yes. They'll figure it out when they get there, but they go. So,
Did she say that?
so LA Fire, are you talking about the big lesbian lady that everybody's looking at? She's a
I believe
very,
so.
yeah, she's an obese lady.
Yeah, she made that comment that really pissed me off. I was the only one that I saw that was like, um, somebody asked her, could you get my husband out of a house if he was trapped? And her response was, well, if he's trapped in there, then he's got bigger problems or something like that. And I think that is very insensitive. One, some people don't know their house is on fire, especially in the middle of the night, and the smoke knocks them out. You know, I think saying something like that is pretty freaking ignorant, if you ask me.
Yes, and that is who I'm talking about. I think I might know her name, but I'm not going to speak it. She will get no good publicity from me. But so, and I also want to caution myself, you, and anybody who might listen to this. We don't know the context of that statement, and the statement was very much, well, if your family member finds themselves in a fire, they got themselves into a place that they shouldn't have been. I want to say, I want to because it's a profession that I loved for a long time. That surely it started out as a get out, let the professionals handle it conversation.
I would hope
Be,
so.
we want to believe, but we've all realized, especially recently, that stupid people make it to high places. And and I have been misquoted in saying things like this in the past, and that's why I want to give just a little bit of room for a possibility. I want to think about the good things in the world, but I kind of know that they're not there. But if you know that your house is on fire, the last thing you want to do is wait till somebody comes and pulls you out of it. Get the hell out.
Yeah.
Uh, there will be professionals that come and know how to take care of it. But if you stay in there trying to save it yourself, you're probably going to need some overweight lesbian who has a hard enough time moving her own body to come in there. And what is she going to do? Tell somebody else where you are?
hmm
It, you do not want to find yourself needing a firefighter in LA County, apparently.
Another thing is she chief of department?
She is an assistant chief. The chief of LA County is an older white lady, also a lesbian.
Oh, really?
D Oh yeah, it's DEI all over the place out there. And it makes me so mad. And I'm fine. Like if you, I if you're a lesbian and you are fit to fight and you meet the same standard as everybody else does, cool. But it's obvious that this is one of those positions that's symbolic and now has a loud voice that everybody's paying attention to.
Yeah, and that's one thing that absolutely kills me is there is a lot of people that are in the position of chief, whatever, just leaders across the board that do not maintain the same standards that they expect their line workers to maintain. I think that is absolutely horrendous. Like you should be in top physical shape. If you are in emergency services, or in service to the public, you should be able to perform your job at a very high level. Um, and that is not a good look, especially if you're going to be the ones on the camera. Like, you should look good physically. Your uniform should look good, and probably wouldn't be speaking out of context. You know, I probably would be speaking in a very professional manner all the time.
Yeah, and in fairness, I don't always like to be fair, but I should be. That was not a public video. That was an internal onboarding video. That was
Really,
how, yeah, that was what they were teaching new firefighters, new
and
employees.
that's what you want to teach new people. That's worse.
I would say probably around 2015, 2013, 2017, somewhere in that little sandwich of time. Uh, there was a whole lot of talk in the fire service uh, about fully defensive firefighting.
Whole slicers. You remember that?
I'm gonna not cuss too much. I'm not gonna. We don't get paid for it anyway, so I can say what I want to say. But there was a very small, loud, strong component that was there for Save the Search, and there was a strong part of firefighting professionals that were like, "Hey, in every single house fire, there is still an attainable space. There's still a space that somebody could be saved from. We need to search those spaces." And I am not in the fire service anymore, so I can be sort of critical without any fear whatsoever. But I was a firefighter. I have done searches. I have pulled people out of fires that absolutely survived, and that is worth it. I've pulled people, I've pulled dogs, I've pulled clock radios out. So the profession of a firefighter is to save life and property. Life comes first, everything else comes second.
I've never got a grab, and a grab is slang, fireman slang for making a successful removal of a victim from a burning structure. That's what a grab is. But I haven't got to make one yet. I've searched a lot of houses. I love searching houses. I love being on that side of it. Um, I've also put some fires out, but never got to make a grab. And I think that's a good thing. I think that I want to tell myself that our fire prevention has done a really good job of keeping people out. But I've never been a component of let's reset the fire from the outside and then we'll go in when it's safe. The job isn't safe. You got to get in there and put the fire out. You got to be there with it. Because guess who's still in there? The victims. You know, they don't get the luxury of standing on the outside.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's not for everybody, but it's for someone. And there are people that are broken in a very specific and beautiful kind of way that this is life. And they usually have big mustaches. Mine's very small.
Man, I couldn't grow a mustache because every time I did, because you can't have this facial hair that I have now. But when I would have just the mustache, like I'd get a note saying you can't be within 500 feet of a school, and I'm like, yeah, it's time to shave it.
It's like, no, Hitler, sit down.
Oh, I was worse than that, man. Like straight up CP, like straight up pedo. Couldn't handle it.
You do know the history of the mustache, right?
For firefighters,
Yes.
yes, I do. Please explain.
So, hell yeah, this is one. I love weird history. So if you've ever seen a firefighter and he's got the big mustache that comes down well below his lips and everything else, that's an old smoke eater thing, which means people who would go in fire without breathable air. Little side note, the air tanks on a firefighter are not oxygen, it's just air. The last thing you want to introduce into a fire is oxygen. If you take oxygen out of the tetrahedron, the fire will go out. But before firefighters were wearing masks and breathable air, they would let their mustache get down below their mouth and wet it before they would go in so that it would stop stuff from coming into their airway.
Yeah. Uh, so you know the whole situation about the Charleston 9. I listened to a lecture, and for those that don't know, there was 9 firefighters who were killed in Charleston, and the reason why they died is 100% because of um, the unsafe traditions that they carried on since 1920. I don't know. They just had the same traditions. And it was very unsafe. It was reckless. We've got some traditions are cool, but a lot of traditions are not. But when he came on the department in like early 2000s, they issued him a sponge. That sponge was for going into house fires, to help filter out some of the bad products that were there.
Now, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but in the early 90s, we absolutely knew that breathing smoke, especially in a house fire, was really was a really bad idea. And so SCBA has been around since the 70s at least. I mean, I know we used to see it on Emergency with you know driving the truck with your helmet on. They
Mm-hmm.
had SCBAs. So it's been there. It's hard to get traditional professions to change sometimes. You still see iron workers doing really dumb things, but
Mm-hmm.
tradition. Everybody hates OSHA until their best friend dies.
Have you seen that video of the trench and that guy's like, "Hey, I'm with Oregon OSHA. Looks like you have a shoring problem." You ever seen that one?
Yes. Yes. Look, I do not like government agencies, but I'm kind of okay with OSHA.
I'm okay with them to a certain extent, man. Some of their overreach is like, I cannot do the job. I cannot perform the job because these perceived safety constraints are taking things over. So I'm a fan of them and I'm not a fan of them.
So I want to get this thought process into a lot of minds. Unsafe can be mitigated by training. There is a place somewhere in the middle where you can train to do something that is not safe to make doing that safer. But I mean, it's not safe to walk outside. You might fall on anything. Uh, so there's got to be a trade-off. And one of the best ways to make something less unsafe is to train. The more you train, the more you can mitigate the safety concerns that are there.
Uh-huh.
There's absolutely no way to make firefighting safe, uh, because you do not put a fire out from the fire truck. The fire truck is one of the tools you use to put a fire out. You have to be in there on top of it. You have to be where it's hot. Otherwise, you're just keeping it from spreading.
It's 100% impossible to make driving a car safe. We have
I
to
mean,
do that every single day.
but we set standards and we train people to meet those standards, and that becomes safer
Yeah.
until they get a charger and drive like an asshole and wreck into 17 cars, or they get an Altima that comes pre-wrecked and they bump into everything.
We ain't gonna talk about the Ultimas. We ain't gonna talk about the Ultimas.
All Nissans are Altimas.
Yeah.
Nissan
When I
Sentra? That's a Smaltima.
Yeah, no joke. Looks just
A
like it.
Nissan truck is a Haltima.
A Haltima? Oh man, I'm gonna call him that now.
An Infinity is a Baltima.
A Baltima?
Ballin'.
I
The
like it.
Nissan van is a Taltima.
You're so stupid. Old
I'm
dad
gonna have.
joke, boy.
Hey, I've got a friend. If he listens to this, he's gonna know that I stole it.
Oh god.
Oh yeah.
Do I know him?
No.
Okay.
Probably heard stories about him, but you've never met him.
Okay. I'm tracking. That's funny.
So yeah, but yeah, I have seen that video because the video he's talking about, there's a guy in this huge trench, and if you have a trench that's more than 3 feet deep, you're supposed to shore it. 4 feet. Okay, I knew it wasn't like the height of a normal human. So, but if it's more than 4 feet, and that was confirmed by Blake. So if y'all Google it and y'all find something else, either Blake is wrong or Google is. I don't know. Probably gonna be
I'm a
Google.
trench rescue technician. I can tell you a lot of stuff about trenches.
About there's a man with a shovel or something down in this trench that's got to be at least 15 feet deep.
Yeah, at least. It
It
was
is
wide
at
too.
least, yeah, it is at least twice the man's height. So if he stood up and stood up again, that's how deep that trench was. And dude's just down there. And everybody's just looking at him. Hey, what you doing down there, buddy? Oh, risking my life. And my algorithm has gotten inundated with all things Green Beret. It is 50 grenades deep with Green Berets. Uh, but one of the shorts, reels, I who knows where I saw it, but it was a conversation about the Special Forces Q course. And the person that was speaking said, when we got to our first deployment, it was absolutely, it validated all the training we did in Q course.
Mm.
And so if you are a person who is new in a department and you are absolutely disgusted and exhausted with training, uh, just understand that there's absolutely no way to predict what incident that you will come up on and appropriately train you for it. So you just do a whole bunch of training all the time, and you might take something that you learned in rope rescue and use it in a truck company operation. I was assigned to a truck company, and we used our quint to pick a man off of a roof who had suffered a heat stroke. And it was a combination of that rescue tech and truck company operations that allowed us to be able to do that. And so, you know, and if we had not trained on how to do that, we would not have done that well.
Yeah. There's a one of my mentors told me one time, he said for training, um, they had their weekly training that the department said, hey, this is what you're going to focus on today. But he did his company level training because he was the boss. And what they would literally do is they would go compartment to compartment and just roll up a door, one door a day, and like, somebody pick something out of here. Hey, we're going to use this to train. And that's how they got familiar with all their equipment. And I was like, that is absolutely genius. So I started doing that, especially to my new guys. We would do compartments, and we did it everything twice, you know.
So I'm going to dig deep into the memories here, and I can remember it because it was funny, and I won, and I was glad. I was a young firefighter, fresh out of recruit school, and the department I worked at, you went through recruit school, you got your firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and then uh, you had modules that you had to complete at your company within 3 months. And at the end of that 3 months, the training officer would come out and would test you on something. Had no idea what. He would just show up and say, do this. So it might be donning your SCBA. It might be cleaning your gear after a fire. So training officer comes out to my station and he looks at me and he's like, Mr. Davros, I need you to deploy the fire hydrant assist. Yes, sir. So I grab the fire hydrant assist and I start hooking it up, and he starts yelling and he is screaming at me. He's like, you're out here in this remote station, and if you have to do something, you have to do it then, and you have to do it right. He's absolutely correct. But as Blake was saying, older personnel in the fire department and in any leadership position should still be able to perform any of the basic skills and should know the difference between a fire hydrant assist and a portable fire hydrant. And so he meant to tell me to deploy the portable fire hydrant, which connects by hoses to a fire hydrant or to a water supply of some sort. But he told me the fire hydrant assist, and that's what I was doing, was the fire hydrant assist. So now I do feel like let's go out on this little rabbit trail. I know we're kind of cutting close on time right now.
Send it.
Yeah. So let's say you've got someone who's been an excellent firefighter or an excellent asset to your organization, but they've grown older and they're just not fit to fight anymore. Can they still be an asset, even in a leadership role, even if they can't go out and do the same job that they're leading?
Yes, but I think we have to clarify what's wrong with them, because are they now a liability?
You know, there's a place for everybody, probably. So there is a minimum standard that you should be able to meet, no matter how long you're there. As long as you're on the line, you should meet this minimum standard. And I'm so proud of Pete Hegseth. During his confirmation hearings, he spoke about this. I know. I just really like this guy.
That was cool.
Yeah. And there was a lot of times where he just really put some people in their place. But one of the most significant times for me was he was saying something that I had taken from his book. And it was, yeah, everybody can be on the team, but maybe only certain people are hitters. You know? And so basically the synopsis is, you know, sure, the role of women in combat is there, but you should meet a very specific standard that doesn't change no matter what your biological sex is, to be a ranger or to be a Green Beret or to be in these elite units, to be in these frontline Raider units. And so if you're a female and you can do this standard, rock and roll.
One thing that I really like he said is for an organization, if you have an organization, you must maintain standards, but you must have expectations for your leaders. And he said he would bring back the expectations to the leaders, because a lot of times, especially in the military, you've got these generals that just do general things. What is general things? I don't know. They make life difficult for the warfighters. That's what they do. And that should go back to, if you're in a leadership, somebody should give you expectations of what your job is, but then you should then have expectations and you should meet them. If you don't meet them, you shouldn't be in your leadership position at all.
So when it comes to chiefs, I'm a little bit okay with a plump chief that's obviously not out there performing any physical demands anymore, especially a department chief, because that position is now very administrative. And I want you to be good at that administrative task of running this department. I want you to be getting my grants. I want you to be providing me with the opportunities for training. I want you to be providing me with equipment and resources to use. And I'm okay if you can't come out and run with me. Got it. Not expecting you to. But I don't expect you to do my job for me. So, yeah, so to agree with you, I think every role should have an expectation and a standard, and that it should be met. Well, let's tie this one up. We're going to go ahead and bring this one to an end. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. If you're one of our firefighter friends that's sitting on the couch waiting on that call and you've been listening to our conversation, we'd love to hear what your experiences are. And maybe we'd love to have you join us in another box, like somewhere around here.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just reach out. And for all the firefighters and EMS that's watching this and you're on duty, I hope you have a quiet rest of your shift.
So quiet out there. So quiet. Thank you, everybody. Cheapest way to interact with us is to leave a comment, to hit the like button, to subscribe. All of that feeds into the algorithm. It might get us to our new goal of 12 subscribers.
12. Doubling up.
We have experienced 100% growth in just the first month that we have been putting out videos.
Yeah, take that, freaking Apple.
Yeah, still only 5, but
It's fine. It's fine.
it's still 100%. All right, everybody, have a great one. Stay safe out there. Be prepared. Don't get caught with your pants down unless you're making an OnlyFans.
And only you can prevent wildfires.
That's fire.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.